Mineral and Petroleum Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe has come under fire for saying South Africans have become too reliant on the state for employment. Mantashe made these remarks during an interview with the SABC on Sunday. Now, he claimed the ANC committed a mistake by developing a passive society where citizens expect the government to solve the problems for them. Let's take a listen to it.
I'm now over 70. I've never had a government looking for a job for me. You know that? Never. I went to Teba, I took a contract, went to the mines, worked as a miner, went back home, bought cattle, bought sheep, went back to the mines, and I did that. The difference is that today, because there's a progressive government, people expect that government to go and give them jobs. They don't look for jobs. And that must change. I'm sure to be here in SABC yourself, you look for an advert, you applied, you got into SABC. Not the SAB looking for you. You looked for a job and you got employed. And people must begin to appreciate that you do queue up for a job, you get employed, adverts are not going to employ you. You will have to look for the advert and apply in real terms. If you don't do that, you're not going to be employed. And I'm going back to the point I made. Let's move out of being a passive society to be an active society.
All right, let's stay with us now and speak to Dr. Lumkile Mondi, economist and senior lecturer at Wits University. Doc, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. Compliments of the season. What one just heard, right? It appears to be a simplistic way of looking at a complex problem, particularly when you think about South Africans who at times apply for jobs, and it could sometimes be 5 positions, and we see thousands of people queuing for those positions.
Good evening, Bongiwe, and to the viewers. It is rooted in the political economy choices that the ANC government in 1994 signed up to in the growth, employment and redistribution, which was followed by massive destruction of infrastructure where many of the jobs lied. And therefore, for Minister Mantashe to be speaking this way reflects how alienated from the masses of South Africans, particularly those that had signed in 1955 in Kliptown in the Freedom Charter, where there were having clauses that spoke to that people shall govern, that there shall be peace, security, and comfort for people. And yet today, we hear words such as this one as a result of failure and mismanagement by an ANC-led government and the destruction of infrastructure, where people have been disenfranchised both politically and economically, and therefore are so heavily reliant on the state because the state itself set itself for people to depend on it. So it is very, very cheap coming from the minister.
Let's stay with that last part because it was going to be my next question. He says people are heavily reliant on the state when it comes to issues of employment. But who created this reliance on the state?
It is the ANC government from the political economic choices that they made, that the markets will allocate resources and that a private sector will create employment, and therefore not investing massively in reconstruction and development in the earlier parts of our democracy. Because in the reconstruction program that were developed with the mass democratic movement, we're focusing really on ensuring that we invest on infrastructure, particularly in areas where black people lived, as well as rural areas, which the apartheid regime had underinvested. And more important also, we believe that those programs were going to be labor intensive and therefore create employment opportunities. So the political economic choices by Mr. Mantashe's political party, adopting market-friendly policies and followed by corruption under the Zuma regime, where basically many of the public sector institutions, which were pivotal in creating employment opportunities, investing in infrastructure, in the process, making sure that the cost of business and the cost for families are lower in South Africa. All that was taken under the feet of people of South African people, and therefore where we are today because of those choices, and they should account for those at the ANC and Mr. Mantashe's party, because it is in their domain where we find ourselves in this crisis.
And you speak about the levels of doing business, right? Because ultimately we think about, for example, the unemployment rate being where it is in this country, with serious other issues like crime, corruption, a low level of small business activity. And we then are talking about people who are heavily reliant on the state, as we've heard the minister saying that. One wonders, though, when it comes to some of these problems that are being created, and South Africans watching all of this, especially someone watching us now who's struggling to find a job, what does a statement like that do to them?
It tells people to make the right political choices, particularly at local government level, in the next few months. Remember, Bongiwe, that in Soweto, where my family is, there's no water. The roads have fallen apart. There is no railway system. Buses are unreliable. Taxis are expensive. So the basic requirements that the state should be meeting, of making sure that there are roads, that the railways work is functioning with the labor opportunities that comes with that potholes are fixed, that the city is accessible. So all these things relate to capability and the responsibility of the state to make sure that those are available. It is that disempowerment by the ANC-led government that has put people where they are today. So for people, it means that please make the right choices and making sure that you've got a government that makes things happen, that invests on infrastructure, on creating employment, and making costs for households much, much lower. And we've seen quite a lot of that commitment coming from government through Operation Vulindlela, that a lot of the programs that the Treasury has introduced through Operation Vulindlela are trying to address that. But that will require capability. So we're hoping that the people that are put on the list at local government level are people with the right commitment, with the right level of skills to address the issues that are facing South Africans, including fixing infrastructure, creating employment opportunities, and making our township and our cities better places to live, but also better places to do business.
Quickly, before I let you go, when you look at the economy this year, right, some are cautiously optimistic. I mean, saying that when it comes to economic prospects, they're looking at, ambitious plans when it comes to interest rates and inflation, as well as economic growth. Some say that these remain a pie in the sky and may not go down as, some are envisioning at that level. What are you projecting as far as the economy is concerned this year?
First, I think it's very important for us to really commend what government has done at macro level. Firstly, we hosted a very successful G20. We saw that our city in Johannesburg, for the first time, it got cleaner. A lot of problems were addressed. We hope that can live forever. Secondly, we're out of the Financial Action Task Force grey list, which is fantastic. Thirdly, we are also upgraded by rating agencies, creating South Africa as an investor-friendly environment. And then finally, of course, we adopted an inflation targeting framework that at 3%. So those, for me, are the fundamentals that are critical for us to create an environment that for growth for South Africa. However, we are facing huge challenges. Firstly, the geopolitics are not good at all. We're at war in the world. We've seen what is happening in Venezuela, we've seen what is happening in Europe, and we're seeing what is happening in the Middle East and the threat to Iran that we're reading with Israel and America allegedly looking at whether they could attack the military industrial complex of Iran. So that does not create a very good environment for South Africa, given its export-oriented strategy. And secondly, also, the huge technological shift that we're seeing in the world, with AI playing a pivotal role across all areas of living, whether it's production, therefore replacing humans and using robots to make things and create things, but also in terms of financial transaction and how we do things, how we order food and do all sorts of things. And finally, the structural change that we see in the globe in relation to critical minerals, whereby the critical minerals, which South Africa has quite a lot of them, are becoming center of geopolitics. And what is positive for us is that the war is bringing high gold prices and high platinum prices, which is good for us because we've got such endowment that you can use to exploit those. But more importantly, it will really, for South Africa to sustain this positive environment, it will very much be dependent on what the rest of the world does. But the opportunity lies in the African continent, where I think with this geopolitics, which will be located mainly in Europe and Asia, that in Africa, in certain areas, in SADC in particular, we should be investing more in infrastructure, making sure that it's easier for us to trade within SADC, put the necessary infrastructure, railroad, as well as ensuring that we invest on technology to make sure that SADC can grow in this environment that's very, very difficult of war, of technological change and social change that's in the world.
And especially if we're talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area and how it is expected to unlock, those opportunities. But thank you so much for talking to us. Appreciate it. As always, that was Dr. Lumkile Mondi, the economist and senior lecturer at Wits University.